Hello, another day, another poem. So today we're going to read Ozymandias by Percy Bysshe Shelley. And just before I get into the poem, I think I'd like to share a little bit of the vocabulary that might help you understand it as we read it. So quickly looking at that, what we're going to see in this poem is mostly a statue. And what we start off with is trunkless legs. Trunkless meaning having no trunk, in this case having no torso or upper body. So basically it's just legs standing with nothing above them. Okay? There's also a visage described. Visage is a face, so the statue's face lies on the ground shattered into pieces. The sculptor is the person who carves a statue, and we're going to get a little bit about the sculptor in the poem. The pedestal is sort of a platform or short column that a statue might stand upon. And you might recognize ped in pedestal referring to foot, so it's at the foot of the statue. If something is described as colossal, it is gigantic, huge, and boundless. The desert is described as boundless. That means without any boundary, implying that it is endless or it seems to go on forever. This poem is a sonnet, which is a 14-line poem, and it's written in iambic pentameter, which, if you remember, means it basically has 5 beats per line, usually going weak strong, weak strong, weak strong. When I read it, I'll try to just read it naturally and not worry about the beat, but it's there. So, I met a traveler from an antique land who said to vast and trunkless legs of stone. That's the pattern to it. So, let's go. I met a traveler from an antique land who said 2 vast and trunkless legs of stone stand in the desert. Near them on the sand, half sunk, a shattered visage lies, whose frown and wrinkled lip and sneer of cold command tell that its sculptor well those passions read, which yet survive, stamped on these lifeless things, the hand that mocked them, and the heart that fed. And on the pedestal these words appear: My name is Ozymandias, King of Kings. Look on my works, ye mighty, and despair. Nothing beside remains. Round the decay of that colossal wreck, boundless and bare, the lone and level sands stretch far away. So what we have here is a short poem, basically describing what remains of a statue of a proud king. Ozymandias was the Greek name of Ramesses II, king of Egypt, who ruled more than 3,000 years ago, 3,400, somewhere in that range. And so it's a sort of meditation on the fact that however great and however powerful and however proud this man was, who felt, he could mock the whole world for their weakness compared to his great strength, he too is wiped away from the face of the earth. All we have is these shattered remains. I'll read through the poem one more time and make sure that we understand it line by line. So, I met a traveler from an antique land. We begin with the poet just describing how he heard of the statue. And the poet himself, or the voice of the poet as described here, doesn't actually see the statue directly. So the rest of the poem gives the traveler's report. Who said 2 vast and trunkless legs of stone stand in the desert. Near them on the sand, half sunk, a shattered visage lies. So he describes the remains of the statue as 2 giant legs and a smashed face, half buried in the sand. And the face has a frown and wrinkled lip and sneer of cold command. So it's describing the passion of pride and authority that we see in the face as it remains. And by looking at this face, we can see that the person who cut the statue, the sculptor, well those passions red which yet survive. This sculptor could see in the king the emotions which are now shown in the statue, stamped on these lifeless things. So these lifeless pieces of stone still have the passions stamped into them. We can see them. Here we describe, perhaps, the sculptor, the hand that mocked them, in this case imitated. The hand imitated the passions in the carving of the stone, and the heart that fed. This part of the line is something a little confusing to me. I'm not sure I fully understand it, and I've tried to look into it. Some other writers on it also took different perspectives on it, but the way I see it is the sculptor's own heart could feed the passion. In other words, he gave a little bit of his own feeling to his sculpture. But that's just one interpretation. You may see it another way. And on the pedestal, these words appear. So written on the statue, it says the very proud words of Ozymandias. My name is Ozymandias, King of Kings. Look on my works, ye mighty, and despair. You should be terrified at how great I am as a king and all the great things that I have done. Nothing beside remains. There is nothing left of this king but the two legs, the shattered face. And around that, round the decay of that colossal wreck, around that gigantic destroyed statue, boundless and bare, just empty and going on forever, the lone and level sands stretch far away. So, I leave it to you to meditate upon this and see what you think of it. And I'll see you again soon. Thanks for joining me.